gangster named Sam Giancana.
Giancana was one of the successors to Al Capone, and his domain was the Chicago mob. The Chicago mob controlled everything from Chicago all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Most powerful mob in the country.
Giancana was also a man Marilyn knew very well.
I just know she called me one day and said, "Hey, we're going out to lunch." And I said, "Really?" She said, "And you'll be surprised at who we're going with." And when I walked in, there he was. I had lunch with Sam Giancana and Marilyn Monroe, I believe 3 times.
Not many people have studied Sam Giancana as closely as Bill Romer. Romer was the FBI's man in Chicago. He wiretapped and tailed the hoodlum for years.
Giancana hated Kennedy, Bob Kennedy, and I know that Bob Kennedy had a very, very strong motivation in going after Giancana. Giancana was the #1 target, as Bobby expressed to me on many occasions. He was the #1 target of the Justice Department and of Bobby Kennedy as the Attorney General during the early 1960s.
So, here was Marilyn, an unstable woman, a drug abuser with a love life in chaos, dancing with forces she couldn't possibly control, now a security risk, and a potent tool that the underworld might use to strike at the Kennedys. Mobster Sam Giancana was at war with the Kennedys, and Marilyn was about to hand him the chance he was waiting for.
Eventually, Robert Kennedy ended the affair with Marilyn, cut her off, just as JFK had done. And Marilyn Monroe was slipping into a woozy, boozy, drug-laced world. One weekend before she died, Marilyn and Peter Lawford, the Kennedys' brother-in-law, headed for a retreat in Lake Tahoe.
The Calneva Lodge was supposed to be her refuge. Instead, it would lead to her downfall. The owner of record was Frank Sinatra, but authorities later charged that the real owner was Sam Giancana.
It was here that Marilyn spent her last weekend in a whirlwind of drink, drugs, and sex, while possibly sharing Bobby Kennedy's secrets with Sam Giancana. The Calneva had a Kennedy connection as well. This FBI document concerning Teamster leader Jimmy Hoffa claims that Joseph Kennedy, Bobby and Jack's father, had met gangsters there in the 50s to determine who would end up running the resort. According to the document, the ownership fell to Frank Sinatra, among others. This trip to Calneva was not Marilyn's first.
She'd been there about 5 or 6 weeks before she died and had taken an overdose of pills.
In Chicago, former FBI agent Bill Romer got word of Marilyn's last weekend.
I learned this from a microphone that I helped place in the headquarters of Giancana in a western suburb of Chicago. And just before Marilyn died, the weekend before she died, Giancana indicated that he and Sinatra had taken her to the Calneva Lodge at Lake Tahoe, where Giancana had sex with her repeatedly during the weekend.
And presumably one can speculate, talking, and what she talked about most of all at that time was her relationship with Robert Kennedy. So one can assume, since Sam Giancana was there, that he heard her talking about this, that he was close to the Kennedys' most intimate secrets, this just a week before she died.
Robert Slater was Marilyn's longtime friend. The star confided in him about her affair with Bobby.
Marilyn one day picked up her telephone and went to call the private number on Bobby Kennedy's desk in Washington and got a disconnect. She just got this very bad chip on her shoulder that she was going to find out why Bobby Kennedy had been so close to her, and now he's got what he wants and he's dumped her. She wanted to find out the reason why.
Robert Slater last spoke with Marilyn on the Friday before she died. Slater told her RFK would be in San Francisco with his family over the weekend.
She said, "I'll try him there, but I better reach him before Monday." And I said, "Why Monday?" And she said, "Well, if I don't," she said, "I'm going to hold a press conference and I'm going to blow the lid off of this whole damn thing."
A very dangerous threat from a woman scorned, and very dangerous to many people, not just the Kennedys.
Marilyn Monroe was about to play the final role of her life, the role of a victim. She had delivered to Sam Giancana and the mob the means by which to crush the Kennedys. And from that scenario would come the plot to execute Marilyn and frame Robert Kennedy.